He was old, ancient like these rocks themselves, a giant brown bear whose life was written in scars on his mighty body. Each scar told a story, of a battle for a mate, of a fight with a pack of wolves, of a duel with a bold young rival. He was the patriarch, the living embodiment of the Taiga's power, whose low, rumbling roar was enough to make the forest fall silent. But now the king was dying. His death was neither quick nor merciful. It was slow, humiliating, and came from where he least expected it. It came from his own eyes. The world, once a clear, vivid panorama of smells and shapes, was drowning. It dissolved into a thick, impenetrable, milky fog. The cataracts, like two murky dead lakes, closed his vision. He could no longer see the horizon, the trail, the enemy, or food. He was blind. And he was hungry. It was late autumn, the most terrible time for an animal unprepared for winter. The forest had already stripped itself bare, given away its gifts. Soon the snow would fall, covering the ground and becoming a shroud for him. He needed food to store fat, to survive the long, dark hibernation. But how could he find food when he couldn't see? His mighty nose still served him well, but it wasn't enough. He could smell a mouse under the rotten leaves, but he couldn't catch it. He could smell the scent of berries, but, groping his way, he found only bare bushes, stripped bare by other, sighted beasts. He was a giant, reduced to fumbling in the dark. He was confused, vulnerable, and, for the first time in his long, proud life, he was afraid. He wandered through the taiga, stumbling over fallen trees, crashing his massive chest into pine trunks he couldn't see. He roared. But it was no longer the roar of a master. It was a roar of despair, confusion, and helplessness. And he was followed relentlessly by the one who always comes to the dying. Caw-caw, caw-caw. This sound had been haunting him for 3 days. It was sharp, mocking, as if death itself was laughing at his plight. A raven. The bear hated that sound. He would stop, turn his huge head blindly in the direction of the cawing, and roar with all his fury. He would strike the air with his paw. But the raven was clever. It simply flew to another branch a little further away and continued its mocking song. Caw! For the raven, it was just business as usual. Scavengers are the forest's cleaners, and their job is to wait. They know when an animal is weak. They know the smell of disease, the smell of approaching death. This huge, blind bear was a walking feast. Sooner or later, he would fall from hunger or stumble into a ravine. And then, the raven and his kin would receive their reward. So it seemed. But this raven was not like the others. He was young, large, with feathers as black as night and eyes that shone like beads, full not just of instinct, but of a sharp, almost devilish mind. He watched the bear. He saw not just a mountain of meat, he saw tragedy. He saw the giant poking his nose into the ground, helplessly digging his claws into the frozen earth, finding only rotten roots. He saw his blindness, and in his bird brain, capable of complex calculations, an idea was born. A normal scavenger waits for the beast to die. But what if he didn't wait? The bear collapsed to the ground once again. He was completely exhausted. He couldn't go on. He lay down, resting his massive head on the moss, and prepared to die. The wind howled in the tops of the cedars, and above this howling, like the final nail in the coffin, came a caw. But it was different. The raven flew lower. It did not land on the top, but on the lower, thick branch of a spruce tree right in front of the bear's muzzle. So close that even through his milky blindness, the bear could make out a dark, blurry spot. Caw! It wasn't a mocking caw. It was a short, sharp, demanding cry. The bear raised its head with difficulty. It sucked in air. It smelled of bird. It smelled of insolence. It growled warningly. The raven did not fly away. It cried out again. Caw! It was as if he was calling him, as if he was giving an order. The bear did not understand. He was a beast of instinct, and his instincts were silent. This could not be. The bird, his future meal, could not be calling him. It should be afraid. Seeing that the giant was not moving, the raven took the next step. He flew off the branch, swooped so close that his wing almost touched the bear's nose, and landed on another branch about 50 meters away. And he cried out again, "Caw, come here!" There was so much insistence in that sound, so much strange, inexplicable confidence, that the bear hesitated. What did he have to lose? To die here in despair, or to die there, following the crazy bird? He got up. He was weak, his paws trembling. He took one uncertain step toward the sound. "Caw," came the immediate reply. He took another step, and another. He walked toward the sound like a ship sailing toward a lighthouse in the fog. The raven was a brilliant guide. It never flew far away. It flew from branch to branch, always ahead, always at the same distance, and its sharp, commanding cry was the only guiding thread in this white, blind world. The bear trudged after him. He stumbled, he fell, he got up and walked again. He didn't know where he was going. He just trusted the sound. He trusted the one he was supposed to eat. This went on for what seemed like an eternity. The raven led him through thick windfall and across a dry stream bed. The bear was no longer thinking, he just walked, obeying the sound like a puppet. And suddenly the raven fell silent. The bear stopped, confused, lost again in the silence. He drew in his breath and froze. It broke through the smells of rotten pine needles, moss and fear. A thick, coppery, sweet smell. The smell of blood. The smell of carrion. The raven sitting directly above him made a new sound. It was an excited, hurried caw. It had led him there. The bear, forgetting his blindness, rushed forward. He stumbled upon it, the body of a huge deer that had fallen, perhaps in a fight with another male or from illness. The carcass was almost untouched. The bear roared. It was a roar that the tiger had not heard from him in a long time. The roar of a master, the roar of strength. He pounced on the food. He ate, tearing through the skin and flesh. And for the first time in many weeks, he felt not hunger, but satiety. And the raven? The raven did not fly away. It sat on a branch above him and waited patiently. It did not make a sound. When the bear was finally full, he rolled away from the carcass and lay down nearby. He was too weak to drag the prey away, but he was strong enough to guard it. And then the raven flew down. He did not sit on the carcass itself, but a few meters away, on a rock. He looked at the bear. The bear looked in his direction toward the dark spot. The beast was breathing heavily, but he was not growling. The raven understood. He jumped up to the carcass and began to feast. It was a pact, unthinkable, impossible, sealed in the heart of the wilderness. The raven had found food, but he was too small to protect it from foxes, wolverines, or other ravens. The bear was blind, but he was still a mountain of muscle and fangs, a living fortress whose scent alone would scare off any competitor. The raven became his eyes. The bear became his bodyguard. Their strange alliance did not end that day. It continued. The next morning, when the bear woke up, the raven was already waiting for him. "Caw!" And he led him again. This time he brought him to a stream that was not yet frozen over. The bear drank, and the raven sat on his massive back, preening his feathers. A day later, he led him to the southern slope, where untouched berries were hidden under the first thin layer of snow. The bear ate, and the raven pecked the crushed berries from his whiskers. And so they lived, the strangest pair in the whole taiga, a blind giant and his sighted little guide. When wolves approached, the raven raised a deafening, alarming cry, and the bear reared up, ready for battle, roaring in the direction indicated by the bird. The raven was no longer just a scavenger. He was a navigator. And the bear was no longer dying. He was king again, a king who now had wings and eyes as black as night. The tiger had seen many things, but even it stood still in amazement as it watched the old, blind bear stride confidently through the windfall, guided only by the piercing cry of the bird sitting on his head. It was not just an alliance, it was a lesson that in this world it is not only the strongest who survive, but also those who are smart enough to understand that even a blind giant and a small bird can have one common destiny.